So it looks like Zelensky is about to be assassinated by the Americans. And I know it sounds insane to be saying this, but it's true. I just heard, not 20 minutes ago, I heard that Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, who's the head of the National Security Council, uh, the most important national security aid that President Biden has, and of course, one of the puppeteers behind the Zelensky regime. Well, he said at the Aspen conference, which is a conference of spooks and intelligence types, that Zelensky should be very afraid for his personal safety. Oh, God. I mean, dude, it's unbelievable. Jake Sullivan is saying that Zelensky is going to be killed. And of course, if you think about it, all the signs are there because several things are happening simultaneously. Number one, the Russians are about to win in the Donbass. The Battle of the Donbass is about to be over, clearly won by the Russians. And the Russian army, when they hit Kramatorsk and go over it, and they're going to go over it like it's a speed bump on a highway, when they go over it, there is nothing between Kramatorsk and Dnipropetrovsk. There is nothing, essentially, between the Russian border on the east of Ukraine all the way to the Dnieper River. It's empty. It's cow country. And so the Russians are going to be able to advance and take territory like never before because people don't seem to understand the war that's been going on in the Donbass. They keep saying that it's so slow and this and that. Well, that whole region is heavily fortified. It's been fortified over the last 8 years. And here's the kicker, that for 8 years, they fortified that region. For 8 years, they trained the Ukrainian armed forces to NATO standards. For 8 years, they got ready for this war. And it's happening, and the Russians are just relentlessly grinding through it, and they're about to win. And once they win, once they get over the last defenses at Kramatorsk, that's game over, because there is nothing between Kramatorsk and the river. And frankly, there is nothing from Kramatorsk. From your point of view, here's eastern Ukraine, and here's western Ukraine, and Poland over here. There is nothing beyond Kramatorsk all the way to the Polish border. And people ask, how come the Russians haven't destroyed the bridges over the Dnieper River? Very simple. The Russians know that they're going to need those bridges to cross them, to go out and take Western Ukraine. That's their intent. That's what they're going to do. And they are just weeks away from doing this. And once they get over Kramatorsk, like I said, it's over. Because there's nothing to stop the Russians. And so the Americans understand this. The Ukrainians understand this. And so the Zelensky regime, have you noticed that there's been all kinds of inter-palace politicking? People get fired and then they're not fired and this and that, the other. What's going on internally in the Zelensky regime, insofar as the palace intrigues are concerned, we'll never know. And we can speculate till the cows come home because, recently the head of the SBU, he was fired. He was the best friend of Zelensky from childhood, and he was fired by Zelensky. And then later, Zelensky walked it back and said, no, he's not fired. He's just suspended. And, what kind of palace intrigues are going on? Who knows? But clearly, this kind of palace intrigue, it starts happening when the situation starts to deteriorate, when it becomes clear to the participants that they are on the losing side. Do you see these kinds of palace intrigues with the Russians? No, you do not. The Russians are all on board. They are all behind Putin. Putin looks like a winner. Whenever he gives a speech or whatever, he is a winner. Everybody's on board. Everybody's, singing from the same hymnal. He's their guy. They're winning. Whereas the Zelensky regime, they know that they're losing. And all the PR stunts and all the ghosts of Kiev and God knows where else, they're not going to change. I mean, you can't win a war with ghosts. You can't win a war with tweets. You need to win a war with, soldiers, artillery. The war is lost. The Zelensky regime is panicking. All kinds of palace intrigue is going on. And now Jake Sullivan starts talking about his fear for the personal safety of Zelensky. They're going to take him out. Because, of course, from the point of view of the Americans, it makes more sense to have a dead Zelensky than a living one. Because if they take out Zelensky, the whole country, Ukraine, it collapses into chaos. And in fact, it would be smart for the Americans to assassinate Zelensky while he's having a meeting with his military leadership. So you decapitate all of Ukraine in one blow, and the whole country, the Ukraine army, everything collapses into chaos, total chaos. And so the Russians are going to be stuck with this enormous country that is descending into civil anarchy. That's what the Americans are probably going to do. And of course, they're going to blame the Russians. And they're going to use the mainstream media, the accredited media, to push the narrative that it was the Russians who killed Zelensky. The Russians have no interest in killing Zelensky for a very simple and very pragmatic reason that a lot of people have said, which is the Russians need Zelensky alive so that he can sign the ceasefire, so that it would give the ceasefire legitimacy. If the Russians wanted to kill Zelensky, he'd be dead already. He would have been dead months ago. He could have been dead on the very first day of the invasion. But the Russians, who could kill him whenever they wanted to, because they have the spies and the missiles to do it, they have not touched him because they need him alive. But Washington no longer needs Zelensky alive. He's more valuable as a martyr because they can point the finger at the Russians and say, the Russians did it. Those evil Ruskies killed Saint Zelensky. And they'll make monuments to Zelensky, and I'm talking literal marble monuments to Zelensky, as a martyr to the evil Russians. That's what they're planning to do. And the fact that, why would Sullivan telegraph their intentions this way? Because if you notice, the American administration, it has this weird habit of projecting, of articulating and projecting onto the opponent, the adversary, what they themselves are thinking of doing. It's the weirdest goddamn habit. It's just bizarre. And for some other opportunity, I will discuss where this weird habit comes from, because it's a peculiar ethnic habit that I've noticed. But that's for another video. The fact that Sullivan is saying this, that he fears for Zelensky's personal safety, they have already made the decision to get rid of him. They are going to kill him. The Americans, not the Russians. The Americans are going to missile strike Zelensky, probably when he's meeting with his other military leaders, and they're going to blame this missile strike on the Russians. And the Americans are going to produce all kinds of falsified evidence, claiming that the Russians did it, so that the rest of the world, or at least the West, believes that the Russians did it to further isolate Russia. That's the point. And they're going to kill Zelensky, decapitate the Zelensky regime totally. I mean, they're going to try to kill Zelensky when he's meeting with his head of the army, Zaluzny. They're going to try to do it then to knock off the head of the army, knock off Zelensky, have all of Ukraine descend into total chaos, and just punt this whole Ukrainian problem into the lap of the Russians. And so the Russians are going to be stuck dealing with the political fallout of people believing that the Russians killed Zelensky with a missile strike, with the practical problem of all of a sudden having this huge country, the size of France, the size of Texas, that they have to occupy and pacify. And of course, the Americans are going to pump up all kinds of saboteurs, terrorists. They're already doing this. It's already happening in territories controlled by the Russians, where you have all kinds of saboteurs trying to stir up trouble in any way that they possibly can. That is going to get dialed up to 11 by the Americans. And this is the game plan, because they realize that the war cannot be won. You're also noticing that the Americans and the Europeans are cutting off the money spigot and cutting off the weapons spigot. The Europeans had approved something like 9 billion euros to the Zelensky regime, and now they crawled it back to 1 billion. And probably they're not even going to see the 1 billion, because everybody realizes the reality on the ground. And, this whole thing that I'm describing, it's so fucking cynical. And I'm probably going to be wrong in a lot of the details, but the general outline is accurate. The West, with this statement by Jake Sullivan, they are done with Ukraine. And now what they want to do is cause as much chaos and misery in Ukraine and dump the whole problem into Russia's lap. And dump the whole responsibility onto Russia, all the blame on Russia. That's their game plan. That's how the Biden administration and those evil people at Foggy Bottom and the Pentagon, that's what they think is the only play at this point. Zelensky is a dead man walking. Understand what's going on.